Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. It is Thursday, not Friday. It is a Thursday, third hour. We're doing a very special What Just Happened because tomorrow's we observe Juneteenth, so we're off. We got three great people joining us. Keith Price is back, comedian, actor, writer, radio personality. He was the first out African-American personality on SiriusXM radio and host and executive producer of his own podcast, Keith Price's Curtain Call, available Broadway World, iTunes, and everywhere else. Keith, nice to see you.
Hello, how are you? What's going down?
I'm doing all right. You know, a lot to cover. Look who else is here. Scott Blakeman, my buddy. One of the top political comics in the nation, made countless TV appearances. We created Stand Up for Peace together. We toured trying to bring peace, and that failed. And he's also does a podcast with Tom Sawyers. Isn't Tom Saunders?
Yep, go Getting Through This with Tom and Scott. And this Sunday, if you're in New York, I'll be doing my solo show called Radical Left Lunatic at the Reverie Room.
That's very good. And look, coming to us from some undisclosed clandestine location, it is V Spehar, author, wildly popular.
Under the Desk News, Dean, Under the Desk News.
No, I was going to say author, but I'm like, you're not an author, are you? You could have been. And I'm like,
Book's not out yet. Book's not out yet. I'm working on it.
These get Under the Desk News. I got all that in my notes, but I'm like, I had the word author. I'm like, author. So I'm hitting my head here. Anyway, these get Under the Desk News, over 3 million TikTok followers, almost 1 million now on Instagram. I saw, which is remarkable. You don't need TikTok. Let it go away. You got Instagram. You got, I'm kidding, YouTube and everything else. Good to see you. And V gets big interviews with U.S. senators after breaking news, which is just remarkable. Congratulations. That's good stuff.
Yeah, they want to talk to the kids, so they come on my show. I think it's been good for me. But yeah, we just had Senator Padilla, which was incredible.
That's right.
What a remarkable guy, and what a terrible situation.
Certainly. So let's talk about a fun thing first. Massive No Kings protests, all 50 states. We have 13 protests alone in Wyoming. Like, it's insane. Some were small, some are, big size for Wyoming. And you had obviously massive protests in Philly and New York and red states and blue states and everything in between. So I'll start with you, Keith. I don't know if anyone went to one. You can touch on that. But Keith, what was the significance of seeing millions, literally millions and millions of Americans across the nation standing up to Donald Trump? I can't hear you now, Keith. Keith, you're silent again.
Wait, there I am.
There we go.
It was refreshing, I will say. At the least, it was refreshing. The thing is that, again, as part of the Black folks that's kind of just letting the protests go on, because I need to see what is going to really come of this, because I'm too old to be just jumping out there. I'm not one of them. I'm not looking to get arrested, because I'm still a Black man in America, and I don't care if it's a protest or whatever. I do not need to get thrown into the system. Secondly, at the same time, it's sort of like watching all of this is really great. I love to see that this energy is going. I'd love to have known where all this energy was during the election. I hope this is part of that same energy that came out of the election that's happening. But the big picture is, the parade still happened. We still protested, and we're still fighting for the shit that we've been fighting for before. So as much as I like the show and the presentation of it all, I just wonder where the effectiveness of it and where's that energy going to go.
And that's a great point, because people call the show and they were inspired, excited, but many said, well, look, in a few weeks, people are not going to talk about this. What's next? Mm-hmm. And how do you channel this activity into something more tangible? So V, what was were you covering it, or you were at this event?
Oh yeah, we had 4 protests in Rochester, New York, all over, and there was a talk ahead of time being like, is 4 too many? Should we just have one big one downtown? I think it actually worked out to have it in neighborhoods, because it really allowed people to feel like they could go. We saw it like in the Brighton neighborhood, which is a historically Jewish neighborhood in Rochester. There were people in like their 70s, 80s, and 90s coming out, right? They're not going to go to downtowns protest. Right. They're going to go to Brighton's, or they're going to come out to Irondequoit to the beach. Something to note is, I think the final figure that came in is there's an estimate that about 12 million people showed up to the No Kings protest. Well, 74 million people voted for Kamala Harris. So I do believe that there was a great crossover and enthusiasm between the people who showed up for Kamala Harris and will continue to show up for progressive candidates, and what we saw at the No Kings movement. Where I think we brought together some new community was the fact that they were somewhat smaller protests. And in Rochester, in some of the smaller towns, we were calling them gatherings, community gatherings and demonstrations. I think when folks hear the word protest, they think about LA or Philly or Chicago or some of those
Right.
like more, I might call it professional protests where it gets a little bit heated. There are people who are used to having confrontation with the police. What I experienced was a lot of folks who found out, maybe for the first time, that there were thousands of people in their very own neighborhood that felt the way that they did.
Ah,
I think
interesting.
that was a really heart-centric, like we talk about how the right is said, oh, they need a patriotic moment to galvanize MAGA. I think we got the patriotic movement with the No Kings thing. And it was about the basis of America being not for kings, period. You can't argue with it.
That's very important. And it's also interesting that you mentioned in the Jewish community, people from their 70s, 80s, and 90s, which is my favorite radio channel on SiriusXM, 70s, 80s, and 90s music. Scott, what about you? What did you do? Or what
That
did
is my channel. 70. Well, you know, I was there at Bryant Park here in New York City, and I'd been at the first two hands-off rallies, which had good turnouts. But, you know, the key to a movement is, does it build? And this exponentially, and this last one last week was much bigger turnout. Before that, I could just walk to Bryant Park Library and get on Fifth Avenue. This, it was way blocked up. It went on for hours. And you know, as people say, the only way to fight despair is to actually do something. And I think it's significant, as V points out, in areas where you wouldn't expect big turnouts. This just wasn't like a, you know, LA, New York kind of thing. It was so many communities stepping up. And you know, not everybody sadly voted the last election. I wish they had. And despite Trump delusionally, which is everything he says, he won by a landslide. 1 or 2% in all these states made the difference. So we're seeing that energy when we need it. And most importantly, it's growing with each movement as they keep doing more and more horrible things.
It is very, look, it lifted people's spirits and it gives people hope. And when I've had on experts on fascism on this show, and I've read many books, too many books recently on it and stuff, the dictator or the wannabe dictators want you to feel helpless. They want you to feel hopeless, powerless. And that did the opposite. And that's why they don't like it. It also pushed, it's funny, it pushed the National Guard and the troops in the street, which was unnerving all of us, out of the coverage. And those troops are still there, but no one's talking about it. They're just guarding around the courthouse and they're not really doing anything and it's quiet. And the story became this. Now, the flip side, of course, was Trump's birthday parade, which was not just low energy. First of all, it was for the troops. I feel bad for them. I wish they had a president who respected the military, who didn't attempt a coup, but it was for them, 250 years of the U.S. Army. It was not a good turnout. I honestly felt for the troops, they deserve better because Trump made it, he hijacked it about him. And also you had many of them marching out of sync, and there's different views on it. I did a lot of research on it. Some say that sometimes how they march in these situations, others say it was a form of protest. So V, I mean, what did you, I watched, like I had to watch 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, this is not good, you know?
So a couple things about the military parade is there was always going to be a celebration of the Army's 250th birthday. And those celebrations did happen in small towns. So like my friend Matt is in the Army down in Tampa, and they had a nice birthday party at one of the bases. Everybody got dressed up.
Oh.
It was really fun. That's what it was supposed to be about, celebrating the Army. Trump trying to pull this up and have a North Korean style military parade. Well, he didn't get the ceremonial folks. They didn't have the old guard that trains to march like that and look so professional. You know, we've seen our military do that style marching. He didn't know how to get them because he's got Pete Hegseth, who doesn't know shit about the military either. So they get up there. They were ordered to march. They were not ordered to sell it. Okay. And they were rolling slow and they were marching out of sync. And partly it's because they didn't want to be there. The thing that my guys were telling me in our group chat that we have with my military guys, they were pissed because it was Father's Day weekend. And some of these guys, their first Father's Day weekend, and they were pulled up away from their families. I have chills right now because they were pissed. You know, it was disrespectful to them, not just to force them to do this sort of fascist thing they don't want to do. It's against their oath, but also would have been a 4-day weekend for us. And those guys had to be up there away from their families working that weekend. They're still there loading up those tanks and trying to clean up all that crap. He gave them terrible living quarters. They were living, you know, shoulder to shoulder on bunks in warehouses. They didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough rest. So you get what you get.
Yeah.
A king is only as good as how he takes care of his subjects. And Trump's a terrible king because he doesn't know how to take care of people.
That's interesting that you had that insight into what members of the military said, because I read military.com and I was reading other articles that people wrote, I'm old enough to watch, remember Stripes, which I love Stripes. And I was hoping, that's the fact, Jack. Did you train yourselves? That's the fact, Jack. Like with Bill Murray, which is like, if
That
people
would have
who
been
were
funny.
around my age know, I mean, it was a
Well-
classic comedy movie in that genre with Ghostbusters and Caddyshack and
Yes.
Stripes that were all there. And those helped define my comedy over my lifetime. So look, we have to enjoy some moments. So Keith, these are the little things I enjoyed. So what do you think, Keith? The sadness of this parade. Did you feel bad for the army it was supposed to be for them? He hijacked.
Well, he hijacked what was meant for them, which is again typical of him. So again, for me, his behavior was right on par. The fact of the matter is that again, we have to sit and endure all of this. We're still watching all of this. We're still having to put up with this. And part of it is because I don't know what the level of action we're supposed to have to start thwarting this. Because the thing is that he's gotten rid of most of the guardrails anyway. So this is why we're watching this foolishness. You know what I'm saying? And we're stuck with it until somebody does something, or I hate to say, the metaphor is, someone has to pull a trigger to make something happen, because this is ridiculous.
You don't mean that literally, of course.
I don't mean that literally. I mean
know.
it's just like something has to give, because this is just too much. It's like the courts that we have in this country are taxed, and they're taxed out because of all of the facts that they're wasting all this time and energy dealing with the court cases that he's forcing to have happen. The Supreme Court and all of these people, and the time and energy that they're wasting ruling on shit like, the transgender stuff. Like, this is what's happening, and we're standing here idly watching it, because we feel like we can't do anything. But then the things that we need to do are going to have to be aggressive, and nobody wants to have to be aggressive. And that's where we're at. We're at stalemate. It's like you can't shoot, two sitting political figures in a state, and it's not to consider terrorism. It just isn't.
Well, it is terrorism, and we'll talk about that. Minnesota's absolutely 100% terrorism. So, Scott, look, what if Trump said, I want nationwide rallies for me? Do you think he'd get 10 million people? 12 million people?
I loved how the New York Times, they haven't covered these rallies great in the past, but on the print edition, the upper banner headline contrasted, the protests, No Kings, and the military. And obviously, as we discussed, the turnout was tremendous for No Kings and pitiful. Trump was asleep, by the way, as you saw in some of his rally, and everyone's yawning. And also, it costs about $50 million. And they probably destroyed a lot of the streets in D.C. because they're not made to withstand these heavy tanks. But this is a guy, no president has disparaged the military more than Donald Trump, going back to his first statements about John McCain when he said, I like my war heroes who weren't captured, and on and on and on. So I think the military, I hope at least their walking out of sync was a direct protest. And also what's going on in LA, it's costing about $150 million to have Marines in LA for no reason, standing in front of buildings. Like in DC, they have horrible living conditions there. There's no plans for anything. And to think that our military is being spearheaded by Donald Trump, who knows very little about anything, not even real estate. And as you said, Hegseth, an alcoholic weekend Fox anchor. And as we now are on the verge of war with Iran, it's terrifying, really, the situation we're in. And I know, Keith, we feel that despair, but I think that there are people, and I think it's even among MAGA and Republicans, they're starting in small ways to go, is this what we, bought into? And hopefully that'll continue that way.
And I'm talking with Keith Price, Scott Blakeman, V Spehar. We're doing a special Thursday edition of what just happened. So speaking of Iran, look, there are little things in life you have to savor, like beautiful sunrise, this fresh coffee beans. But the war in MAGA is not a little thing. It's a big thing. And it brings me an inappropriate amount of joy. And I'm not afraid. I'll say it. These are all despicable people. And one of the fights, Tucker Carlson versus Ted Cruz, watching them fight is like, as a Giant fan, watching the Cowboys play the Patriots. I'm rooting for injuries. I want to see as many injuries, not literally for the Cowboy fan, but in this, maybe. So you have Laura Loomer getting attacked and attacking others. Mark Levin getting the crap kicked out of him. MTG saying things about Trump, defending Carlson. Trump now going out today against Fox News. You've always been garbage and all this stuff. Steve Bannon going against everyone, scorched earth, from Netanyahu to Rupert Murdoch, the Murdoch family. this is fun. I mean, what can we do, V? Is there any more way? How do we enjoy this? And isn't it good for the nation on a big, as they fracture, that coalition fractures, isn't it good for us?
It's definitely good for us that the coalition fractures. But the thing I want to remind people is these have always been deeply unserious people who have a political humiliation kink. Okay. Tucker Carlson's porn is getting people all worked up and frazzled. And he just ran out of people on the left to work up and frazzle. It wasn't fun anymore. So he switched his partner. Ted Cruz sitting in that interview the whole time, he would have never sat that long for anyone else, but he could not believe that his friend, the person that he thought was on his side, was continuing to get his ass that bad. This is still a kink for Tucker Carlson. He's just elevated now because he recognizes that he's getting even more attention, even more accolades for going after folks like Ted Cruz or Trump or being so smart. So I would be careful how much we indulge ourselves in enjoying watching Tucker Carlson, because we are really just participating in their kink.
That's it. And it's interesting. It was interesting when Carlson said to Cruz, how many people live in Iran? I don't know the population, Ted Cruz, at all. I don't know the population. Like, I knew it was 90 million.
When he said, "Can you seek to topple that government?" Cruz did not deny it. When he said, "Well, we're bombing them." Well, that's breaking news to me. Yeah, Exit on it, saying that we're renaming for the Confederate soldiers, not for new heroes who happen to have the same last name as a Confederate soldier. Right. Tucker's doing good journalism at the expense of my nerves, but I appreciate it, I guess.
He did. Well, it was recent. Only Ted Cruz's ego could answer why he went on that. Like, there was nothing, it wasn't going to help Ted Cruz to go on this, but his ego said, let me go on and hang out. And
well, the thing is, he walked in thinking that he was going to have a softball interview like every other person that's given him time on Fox. The other part of this is that Tucker Carlson, whatever checks he might have been getting from the GOP, I'm sure are not coming as thickly and as fabulously as they used to, which is the reason why now he has to either decide if he's going to try to act like a real journalist or do the job that he should have been doing years ago, which was to be a journalist, and now it looks cute that he's doing it, but in the end, you're talking about low-hanging fruit on that table. Fred, what has Ted Cruz been doing up until now? Because honestly, up until now, this is the first time I've heard his name really mentioned involving any of the major things that have been going on as of late. Right. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. And also it was interesting when he cross-examined him on everything. At one point, Tucker said, why do you support Israel like the way you do? He goes, number one, because biblically we are commanded to support Israel. And Carlson goes, hang on. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel. And I'm like, okay, that was a very good. I'm like, I don't like Tucker at all. I call him Tucker Klansman for years on my show because he's a white supremacist.
Yeah.
And so I don't like him at all.
That's the other reason why
I do like
went after
watching
Ted Cruz.
These people kick the shit out of each other. I love that Laura Loomer is she got so upset. She was, MAGA's turned on me. And some people are despicably throwing anti-Semitic stuff at her as if MAGA didn't have a big anti-Semitic wing. Like, don't be surprised. You know exactly who you're sleeping with there, maybe literally in terms of Trump and her. But Trump, Scotty, what do you think, my friend, about Tucker, Ted, and the whole fight? It's much bigger than these two now. It's everywhere.
It goes back a little bit to Elon Musk too, who was a very divisive character who had his wings and Stephen Miller, who is one of the most despicable people. His wife actually works for Musk, so there's divisions there. Look, these are just, to a person, terrible people. And I never felt that in the past. Bob Dole, Republican, decent guy. George W. Bush, Iraq policy, one of the worst things ever, but not a horrible person. But these people, horrible. And I would just take it to the next level. By the way, Tucker Carlson kept emphasizing in that interview, but I love Trump. I just spoke to him yesterday.
I know.
So Ted Cruz, even though he slithered back to Trump doesn't like him. They were combatants in the primary. So in a way, Tucker was consistent in that he was sort of towing Trump's line against Cruz. But I just have to throw in now, look, Dean and I, we were doing Stand Up for Peace during the Iraq War, which up until now was the worst situation that has just to completely destabilized the region for 25 years, will continue to do so. We're on the verge of something now. And as you said, Dean, you wrote, Trump, he just said yesterday, well, I like to make my decision the second before it's due. What is this? Is math homework? you know, and then with Hegseth, and if they go ahead and they support Israel on this, which, you know, there was a treaty that Obama administration had negotiated that was keeping Iran from having a nuclear weapon.
That was the whole
Just
point of
in
that.
March, the intelligence community, Tulsi Gabbard, who I don't normally agree with, the assessment was Iran is not attempting to build a nuclear weapon. They're not reauthorizing a nuclear campaign. And Netanyahu, for 30 years, has said, oh, Iran is on the verge of a nuclear weapon for 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's all about Trump. This is all about Netanyahu.
The Daily Show did a great supercut
Yeah.
of all that stuff. V, I mean, when you're speaking to people often younger on your show, and it's not about support. Like, no one wants Iran to get a nuclear weapon. That's why Obama had a deal. So we'd have transparency and monitoring from above and inside and everything. And that's the responsible thing. And maybe the goal really was Iran. Maybe you get them into the community, the world community, as a responsible actor. That might be naive to hope that, but that was the ultimate goal. But when you see, like, Jon Stewart just destroyed Netanyahu, but when they did Supercut, are young people seeing this side of Netanyahu? And what are you hearing about the U.S. getting involved in actually bombing Iran and maybe getting involved in a war?
So I think that that young people are much more easy to pick up on grifters. And I think that comes from them holding content creators, quite honestly, very accountable, and everybody thinking, oh, you must be paid. And this and that. What they're doing right now is they were able to early on identify, hey, looks like that APAC money might be drying up, and maybe they're getting a little more money from Qatar and the Saudis and Doha. Because why is it so difficult right now for different people to make different decisions? And I think Tucker Carlson called out the APAC money thing with Ted Cruz a little bit, but Trump is a person who will sell to the highest bidder. He's waiting to the last minute, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, for who's going to give him the best deal. Is Netanyahu going to give him the best deal? Or is he going to protect his assets that he's building in the Middle East with his crypto and the future resorts they're promising him and the planes they're promising him and the gold and who knows, probably a harem of 20 virgins. Like, I don't know what they're promising him over there, but he's going to go with who gives him the biggest deal. And what I'm looking at is Tucker Carlson was just at the Billion Creator Summit in Doha. Tucker's all up in the Middle East too, looking at Saudi money, Qatar money. And why does he know so much about Iran? Why is he so willing to attack the pro-Israel lobby, which he hadn't been really before? So I think we got to zero out a little bit and recognize that these people are all grifters. They are all to the highest bidder. Who's paying that right now? Where's that check coming from? And
Told you, girl.
Know what their real motivations are.
Amen.
That's interesting how people, the younger people look at the motivation, and that's really critical thinking. At a high level, you go at the bias of a speaker and wonder why they're saying that's so vitally important.
Well, Tucker, I think maybe he didn't realize how exposed it would make him. But this Billion Creators Summit that I was also invited to in Doha that I did not go to because gay people don't go to Dubai. Okay, I just am not looking like this. Okay, and I don't want to be associated, right? I got to stay out of all that. But a lot of my friends who were there, who are also at VidCon right now, are all talking about how Tucker was there and how he was talking to them. Well, that exposed him to this creator class and these younger journalists and different folks who are like, yeah, that boy's getting paid by somebody over there.
Interesting.
Yep.
I would just throw in that
again.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, babe.
Oh, well, just quickly, you're right. I mean, the choice he's making. What could Netanyahu possibly offer? Netanyahu was the reason why he probably pressured Trump to exit the Obama administration treaty with Iran. We wouldn't be in this situation. He is, he's holding, and what Netanyahu has done, he's declared war on Gaza, where over 70,000 Palestinians have been killed, in Syria and Lebanon and the West Bank, as we speak now, no one's talking about Gaza, but hundreds have been killed in the last week or so alone. And Netanyahu, like Trump, is all about himself, and he's going to keep wars going so he doesn't have to leave office and go to jail. I mean, Dean, you probably heard, there's a bunch of comedians we know who are over Israel.
Yes,
doing
Brian
shows.
Scott McFadden, who comes on the show.
I'm saying, yeah, and Ray L and others, and they were posting from bomb shelters. Thankfully, they got out through Jordan. Now they're in Rome. A very close friend who who's I coached as a stand-up comedian. Now he's doing an internship in Israel. I'm terrified for him. Already, many people have been killed in Israel. Hundreds have been killed in Iran. This is insane. All war is insane, but this is particularly. And I just hope, even though he's insane too, Trump, that he listens. First of all, Trump has always said we shouldn't get involved with wars. A lot of the MAGA base feels that way. I hope they stick with that, but he's going to get nothing from Netanyahu except a war that will not just bring in the whole region, but I don't want to be hyperbolic, but maybe the whole world.
So Qatar's probably got a new plane. It's like, hey, Donald, why don't you do this? We can give you a plane. And Dubai, and their interests are very it's a little bit more complex. At one point, all the Arab Gulf countries didn't like Iran, but since 2023, Saudi is thawing their relations there. They're trying to build their own EU in a way. So they're like, we got to get Iran into this fold in a way. So all of a sudden you see Saudi and Qatar, which is where Doha is, and other countries in UAE where Dubai is, being a little bit more open. They don't really like Iran because of the baggage, but they could see a business interest in this. So they're not sure, because a few years ago, they all would have been on board with bombing Iran. You know, it wasn't just Israel that wanted Iran bombed. Saudi wanted Iran bombed, you know, but they weren't going to do it. Now it's this weird, uneasy thing that is going on. So I really wish they could reach a peace deal that keeps Iran from getting a weapon and keeps the people of Iran being killed and people of Israel being killed. And Hind, my fiance's family's in Haifa, and they're in bomb shelters, but they go to bomb shelter. They their life is bomb shelters. Like they're used to it. They're not jarred by it.
Hey,
So let's
how that bomb shelter in Israel, or where is he at? Magus Jennings, is he still at that bomb shelter?
I think he's out. I think that the people they're like, we've suffered enough. We don't need you.
They sent Caitlyn Jenner out.
I was just about to say. Did she get free?
They got her out first. They were like,
comedians got on buses. Yeah. They got if you went to Jordan or to Egypt, you were able to fly from there. So they got them out that way. Hind, my fiance, is an actress. She was actually cast in a television series back in Israel because she's Palestinian, but she's born and raised in Israel and speaks Hebrew perfectly. And the shooting was supposed to begin of the film series. The shooting began instead of a war, so she couldn't go, and so she's home now, upset with me. So all right, let's take a break and come back. We have some serious stuff and hopefully some lighter stuff as well, but we have to touch on the Supreme Court decision on transgender minors, which is just horrific. At the same time, ending the suicide hotline. Trump celebrates Pride Month by doing that. But then we have some fun stuff as well, like Charlie Kirk giving marriage advice to 14-year-old girls. So let's take a break and come back with more of the Dean Obeidallah Show right after this. And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. Yes, the special Thursday edition of What Just Happened. So let's talk about some of the serious stuff. And I'm glad that Keith and V, you can give us a little bit more insight into this. Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday, 6-3 decision, obviously the conservatives versus the 3 liberals, upholding a Tennessee law that restricts gender transition care for minors. And we don't have to get into legal analysis. I have my friend Elie Mastal on. We'll talk about that. I wanted to touch on more of the real world, human impact of this kind of thing. And Justice Sotomayor and her dissent touch on a little. So V, let's start with you, then I'll go to Keith on this.
You're just so stupid, Dean. It's just the stupidest thing. So I'll tell you a personal story. When I was like 11 or 12, I had too much testosterone, just naturally. It just was the way that it was. And so I had to have a hormone balance done. That's technically gender affirming care. I'm born female. I had too much testosterone. They were trying to make it so that I would not have so much testosterone. That would be off the table now for certain people. Another kid I went to high school with, he had gyno. He developed too much estrogen, right? And he had a breast reduction done when we were like 15, so he could take his shirt off in the pool and feel like a normal boy. That was gender affirming care. That kind of stuff is going to be on the cutting room for people now, because it never actually just affects trans people. It affects everyone. Why do we allow children to get braces or intense orthodontics? Isn't that an invasive medical procedure? How do we decide that infants who are born with heart defects or stem cell issue or all kinds of problems, isn't that an invasive medical issue? But we trust doctors to take care of it in that way. This ending of transgender care for minors will be so catastrophic to all children, because it's only like less than 1% of kids that were getting puberty blockers because they were identifying as trans, which simply delays puberty until they can develop a little bit more and make that decision for themselves. But it would have affected me, let's say, right, who was a little girl who did not want to look like a little boy at that time. How things change. But wanted the hormones to be right? My mom had to take me and get all this stuff taken together so I could look like the way I wanted to look at 12. That stuff's going to be difficult. So I think it's stupid. It's ignorant. I think we should trust parents and doctors to do what's right for kids. And again, they have the right has this idea that there's like all these people out here doing these mutilation surgeries. They're not. And it's sad.
And I appreciate you explaining all that and also sharing your own story. I appreciate that. Keith, what about you? I mean, the cruelty here is off the charts, and the science shows this lowers suicide rates. There's no doubt. To me, that's the thing. If this medical care will lower the chance that someone takes their own life, that if a doctor prescribes it, it should be done like anything else that helps someone navigate through life.
Well, but again, you're talking about a sector of this population that cruelty is their calling card. And so this is just another way of inflicting cruelty on a sector of the population that these people do not feel choose these people, they've decided that they should not exist and that they should not have access to the things that will allow them to exist freely in this world and comfortably in this world like the rest of us. And so for those folks that are electing that discomfort, and it goes back to just what V said, it's like you guys are going after these people and not recognizing that this is going to affect a whole lot of other people beyond your target group. And that target group, beyond the target group, usually are those people that are going through this process of trying to stop the target group from living their lives. And so again, we see more FAFO moments with the way people have voted and the way they're dealing with it. And sadly, this is going to be another one, because what is going to happen to V has chosen to live her life the way she's choosing to live it, or they're choosing to live it, I'm sorry. And um and because of that, when she started off as, a young woman with too much testosterone and looking to balance it in such a way that would seem to be the normal way that people want you to be, and that's now going to be on the table, what are those Christians going to do? You know what I'm saying? What are they going to do when they get stuck in that dilemma? If they're going to be like, but I don't understand. We're just trying to get her to be like everybody else. And you know what I'm saying?
They're gonna
That's
have to
what's
go to a
going
blue
to
state.
happen.
They're gonna go to the freedom of a blue state. Scott, I mean,
Not
look,
enough
we just
wax in the world, I'm telling you, that was going to fix what was going on with me. It was an
Hello.
intervention. I was a 12-year-old with a 5 o'clock shadow.
that's it. So Scott, I mean, we just had a massive protest. People came out for all different reasons. Do you think this will just contribute to even more people in the future coming out?
Oh, absolutely. Because I see no difference. I mean, trans rights and just human rights and civil rights, it's all the same. There's no distinctions. And sadly, some, comedians that they think that, oh, it's a whole separate thing. No, it's all intertwined. And I've seen firsthand a trans person who, as Keith, you all point out, I mean, suicidal thoughts. A person who was very unhappy before, and now that they have been able to live the life they want and get the care they want, they're really happy. And as you said, Keith, I mean, they're just cruel. And what is the government in being involved with this to begin with?
Right.
I mean, it's along the lines of Roe v. Wade and all that. It's someone's body. You should have the choice to proceed however you want. And these so-called conservatives, it's not conservative to really the government should just stay out of people's business that way. And sadly, it dovetails with another horrible thing they did by getting rid of funding for the LGBTQ plus suicide hotline. I mean, what sick world does a government do that? And sadly, 40% of LGBTQ plus people have seriously considered suicide. So you're getting rid of the hotline for what? I mean,
No.
under this guise of getting rid of DEI, all they're saying, it's just racism and sexism, and it's just, white males are the only people we care. White straight males are the only
Right.
people we care about.
Right.
Christian.
And
Yeah.
and the thing is that in this pursuit, what we're going to keep seeing is that, again, this is not going to just affect the people that they're thinking that they're getting. It's going to be that senator's daughter who's going to want to be a lesbian, or that senator's son who wants to become a woman, or that, you know what I'm saying, or that representative thing, or that justice's, favorite nephews, cousins, uncles, hairdresser. Like, it's going to wind up getting close enough to them to where they're going to start feeling the fire. And the more that they keep distancing themselves, because again, you're talking about human beings trying to tell other human beings how to live their lives. We're telling people how to live their religiously. We're trying to tell people, it's like, leave people the fuck alone and let them live their lives. Do you know how much simpler this world would be if this is where we would start from? It's like,
Certainly.
you know?
And V, Scott touched on the other thing that we learned. The way Trump celebrates Pride Month is ending suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth. And it's this option known as Press 3. It's going to end on July 17th. And the Trevor Project, which is a leading advocacy group, talked about how that suicide prevention is about people, not politics. And this will reduce a program that effectively supports a high-risk group of young people. So V, what can you share about this?
So I was a volunteer for almost 3 years at the Crisis Text Line, which is another version of the Trevor Project that was specifically aimed at young people who aren't going to call the suicide hotline but might text. And I want to tell you, when you call the suicide hotline, you have the option. I'm a veteran. I'd like to talk to a woman. I'd like to talk to a gay person. Because a person in crisis, you don't want to put them with somebody who they don't feel comfortable with, and then they make a bad decision, right? So on the LGBTQ side, I'm going to tell you the calls that I would get and the texts that I would get were mostly from young people. And they would be like, I just feel like it's never going to happen. I just feel like it's always going to be hard. How? And I'd be like, well, I'm a gay person and I'm in my 30s and it was hard, but then it did get better. And they'd be like, can you just tell me about what it's like to be on the other side of it? And we would just talk about, you know what, it was hard for me in high school too. And they would talk about how they were being bullied or how they didn't feel like they could tell their parents. These folks are calling because they feel so desperately alone. And if you could give them just 2 minutes, 5 minutes to not feel alone, the likelihood that they are going to harm themselves goes down like almost 100%. You can stop that. And we know, I'm sure Keith knows too, when the kids talk to you or they see you. I've had people come up to me after conferences I've done and they've been like, I've never seen anybody who looks like me be successful or be your age. What's it like? And because we're like the first ones. And it's wonderful, honey. It's amazing. I'm married. I found love. I've had ups and downs. I've had problems like everybody else, but you're going to make it too. You can do it. Look, I did it. You're going to do it. And that's all it takes. And so for him to cut this LGBTQ lifeline off because they think that somehow we're counseling people into being gay, it never goes that far. It's just about making that person not feel alone, not feel hopeless for a couple of minutes, and then they can reground themselves and go on and live their life.
And their whole point, by the way, Keith, we'll go back to you. Their whole point is that, we're going to have like this neutral suicide prevention hotline. But so what if you get some right-wing evangelical who's telling you you're a sinner? I'm going to pray for you. I get you struggling. I mean, they're going to try to do their own kind of a conversion therapy type of bullshit. Like, how do you not have a dedicated wrong for each person, every community where that is the stressor event that's making them call? Like, it's not, I'm Arab heritage, but if that's not the event that's causing me to call a suicide hotline, there should be one for whatever that is. This really is for people who are going through this and trying to navigate a difficult life at a young age. It's always hard when you're young. So, Keith, I mean, how concerning is this? Do they want to erase the gay LGBTQ plus community? Is that their goal?
Well, that is the goal. That's always been the goal. That's been the goal of these white national Christian assholes from the very beginning. But the thing is that what has to happen now, because what I think if we're looking at this the right way, what we're learning is that the government is not going to be our friend at least this current administration, for those of us of the certain persuasion, this is not going to be our friend. I know that as a black person, it ain't my friend, but I definitely know that as a gay guy, it ain't my friend either. So what that means is that our communities now are going to have to step up and make ourselves even more aware to the rest of the world, so that those kids that are living in those places that were able to pick up whatever the hotline was that would get them to whatever that number was to get them to press 3 to get to the Trevor Project. That means we need to make sure the Trevor Project is now going to have to be seen on places all over. And if that means put a billboard somewhere in some small town, look, you little queen, you little sissy Mary, this is your moment. Don't let these people get you. Come find us. We will help you. You will talk to you. But now we're going to have to do that now, because we can't rely on the government to at least make the fucking referral. So now we have to, you know what I'm saying? And then also too, it's an attitude about the mental health in this country. We don't take care of the people that are mentally ill. And then now we're going to get rid of the hotline that would help the mentally ill. So like, again, we're not looking out for none of y'all. That's the goal of this. Y'all are on your effing own. So if we're going to be on our own, then we need to act like it and just handle our business, because we can't rely on them to do it. That's all. That's it.
I'm chatting with Keith Price, Scott Blakeman of V Spehar. To me, this is one of the cruelest things that happened to be the same day, actually. But ending the suicide prevention hotline is saying they want people who were in the LGBTQ community to die. But that's not unique, right? I mean, there was a time during the AIDS crisis and Reagan, that there was a sense of it was God's punishment. Just let it be.
Yes, I remember. I
Oh
remember.
yeah,
I was there. Hello.
right. So I think I wonder how this affects younger people that live in a country where from the government you're not wanted. They don't even want you to exist.
It's really hard. And I think a lot of people will hear a statistic like X amount of percentage of the transgender community is suicidal. And they think, oh, they're unhappy because they're trans. No, they're unhappy because society hasn't created a place for them to just be left alone. And
Exactly.
hotlines in these communities that we have go so far. But I'm telling you, a lot of the people who called into the suicide hotline were 14, 15, 16 years old. They don't want to kill themselves. They just need a safe adult to say, hey, baby, you're going to be okay. All right. Why don't we slow down just a little bit and you're okay. And you could call back if you don't feel okay again. And to take that away from them is to truly do detrimental harm to our children. And this will not affect just gay people. This will affect straight people. I was raised by straight people. There were lots of times I worried about, was I going to make it? I thought I would make it to like 23 years old because I had never really seen anybody older than that. And now I'm 42 and I made it. But like, this is another thing where they think that they are doing something or controlling something, and in fact, it will just do more harm. I promise you that there are parents out there who would rather have a kid that secretly called the suicide hotline and spoke to a gay adult than find their child in their room.
Hanging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's change gears here for a second to something lighter. Charlie Kirk from I call him Trump youth leader because that's what he is. He's got their Trump youth in their little uniforms. There was a Turning Point USA Young Women's Leadership Summit, which is just hilarious because we know what they want, but Charlie Kirk told them that. A 14-year-old girl asked Charlie Kirk share their interest in political journalism, and Charlie Kirk instead said about going to college to obtain an MRS degree. Yes, a missus. Get married, folks. And so he told her it's much better. And then he also said that college is good for one thing, that if you're a woman, that's your peak attractiveness, so that your prime of attractiveness, so you can find someone to marry. I'm like, this can't be real. How could this be 2025 America? So Scott, look at Charlie Kirk wants 14-year-old girl to think about getting married, which is not far from where the right is. They want children to work in factories. So of course, if you're working in a factory, you get off your shift, you want a beer, you're 14, you want to get married. This is insanity, what we're living through.
Well, I mean, Charlie Kirk, I can't believe that he actually has achieved whatever notoriety he has, but he's supposed to be representing the youth movement, getting them involved. And, V, we're talking about getting the youth. What youth would be attracted? What he's talking about is the 1950s. His was supposed to be the new young. It's 1950s. It's so backward, and it's almost a parody. How your Mrs. Degree and so
who even says that?
I mean, it's dehumanizing to that 14-year-old woman. Why anyone would rally around that? I'm hopeful that most young people won't rally around that, because young people, first of all, when it comes to, civil rights, gay rights, trans rights, all that, they're way ahead of the curve is the older people. And I think that they're just going to reject. Charlie Kirk is going to should be a minimal figure, because who responds to that? I mean, it's going backwards decades. And I can't imagine anybody would take that to heart. This is stupid.
I love that Charlie Kirk's wife grimaced when Charlie Kirk said this. So I wasn't sure that was about, she's like, don't do this. I'm stuck in this. I can't get out. Or what it was.
Like mouthing the word secretly, help me, help me.
Look, to get a Mrs. degree, you'd still have to get in college, right?
So exactly.
Smart. Anybody who's seen the movie Legally Blonde has already learned this lesson. Men of quality, right? If we're going to say Warren was the man of quality that these MAGA bros see themselves as, doesn't actually want a dumb, hot, doting wife, okay? If he wanted that, he would have had Elle Woods in the beginning. He went to Harvard. He got with that Selma Blair character who also wanted to be a lawyer, because actual men of substance and quality want a life partner that they could share ideas with, that challenges them intellectually, that is smart, can throw a party and be social and be cool. Any man of value is going to want a woman who is a good partner to him and that can keep up, right? Warner didn't want Elle Woods until she got that law degree. And then
that's right.
She was the hot one, right? And she didn't want him anymore. The other thing is, for women out there, you know what? I would have loved, my sister would have loved to just find a nice man who would provide for her and she could stay home and take care of the kids and never have to work. They don't exist. So if you want this dumb, doting, beautiful Stepford wife, then y'all better get another job because you're not paying the bills. You're not keeping her nails done. You're not keeping her kids fed. And if you can't provide all that stuff and take her on a Florida vacation once a year, maybe, I don't know, something nice,
Mm-hmm.
then if the D isn't good, then why
Oh,
would you want to be
ooh, girl.
with her? So that's the thing. They're not giving the wraparound on this. They're just creating this ideal. Oh, we want these dumb, doting, beautiful wives, but they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to provide for it. They don't want to give what they have to give to it. And also, like I said, men of quality want a partner who is their intellectual.
That's what I want. So I'm a man of quality. Look at V bringing the facts and the fire.
I have a hot wife who's smart. See,
I've got my fiance. She's very smart. She keeps me on my toes all the time.
I have a hot wife that's smart. She's classically trained cellist and every other. Yeah, because why? Because you want somebody who thrills you, who can meet you where you are.
I'm just twice divorced.
Oh.
Nobody's good enough for you, babe.
Oh, hey now, thank you.
But I think sorry, Keith. But
No, go ahead, Scott.
just to say, because I'm always looking for us to feel uplifted in some way. I do think that, this movement, this MAGA movement, Trump in general, it does not come close to representing a plurality, a majority of our country, certainly not of the youth in this country. Charlie Kirk is just as represents so few people, so we shouldn't feel overwhelmed that they've taken over. I mean, they're in a position of power and we have to fight them, but it just does not represent who Americans are, and that's the hope for the future.
Telling a 14-year-old who wants to go to college and be a journalist, have you thought of an MRS degree? It doesn't even make sense. It's like Rick Santorum bullshit, but I thought that was dead. That's the thing. That mindset's not gone. It just gets, the younger people now are doing it, and they just put it. It's stunning.
They don't. When I met my wife, right, my dad was like, "Can you afford this? Like, are you?" Can you meet her where she's at? And I was like, Pop, I'm going to work so hard to try. But like, unless you're that guy, right? My dad, who was like, wow, that's a really, really quality, wonderful person. You better act right.
you
On the other side,
That's all right. Before we run out of time, I just want to give everyone a chance to plug your stuff. So, Scott, let's start with you. Where can people?
Well, I'm happy to have something to plug. This Sunday, June 22nd at 7 p.m., I'm at the Reverie Room on the West 72nd in Manhattan. And I just started doing some solo shows. I mean, I'm sure half my material will be what's happening between today and Sunday. It's called Radical Left Lunatic, because that's what Trump calls all the good things in the world. USAID, the Smithsonian, our university. So I'm happily using that title. And you can check me out, Scott Blakeman 5 on Instagram and scottblakeman.com.
Excellent. Scott, I love it. Where can people find your stuff?
Are you talking to me? Because you blocked. Oh, okay. You can find everything I'm doing, KeithPriceCurtainCall.com. I actually just did a gig last night over at the Producers Club. So, I'm kind of gigless now for the moment, but I'm working on my one-man show that I'm hoping to do by the end of the summer. So we will be talking.
Excellent. And V?
Yep, you can find me at Under the Desk News everywhere on social media, and Substack. The best place to support me is the Substack. It's where I can use curse words and tell you stuff that TikTok will kick me off the platform for.
And V, that reminds me, we have to do a Substack Live.
Yes, you need to, please.
We'll do that. All right, all three of you were fabulous. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thanks.
We'll be
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. Yes, happy Pride.
And Juneteenth and everything going
and
on.
Juneteenth. Oh, that's right. Oh my God. I'm very busy today. You don't understand.
Oh
my God. I'm exhausted already.
and with Trump, it's always Muslim Awareness Week. So that's what I'm doing. I'm aware you Muslims. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.